Hey there guys, I'm back to another game review. Today we're taking a look at Akimbot on the PlayStation 5. Reminiscent of 3D platformers from the PS2 era, this game provides a well-needed fill for fans of the genre. The platforming and gunplay is smooth and some of the best I've played in years. Music is bang on and likable characters who will keep the story moving. However, the performance is more misses than hits between screen tearing, freezing during autosaves, and vehicle controls that are terrible. Is this indie game worth $20? Let's talk about it.
Developed by Evil Raptor, a small indie studio who loves 3D platformers like Jak and Daxter and Ratchet Clank. The studio head, Nicholas M., previously worked on Pumpkin Jack as a solo project, a 3D platformer with spooky Halloween vibes. Returning now with the Akimbot and his small team of 8 people, Evil Raptor has cooked up another 3D platformer that any fanatic of the genre can get behind, especially if you love Ratchet Clank because of the gunplay with a greater emphasis on platforming. From the 8 to 10 hour adventure, players can definitely get their money's worth for $20. My main gripes with the game come from the performance. This is a small indie studio we're talking about here, so I'm not going to rip them up for it, but the state at which the game was released obviously could have been better. The game begins with Shipset and Xe being escorted to prison. From the small robot's obsession with money to the very skilled outlaw mercenary, the duo find themselves working together to stop evilware from taking over the galaxy. Our heroes are very cookie cutter for the platforming genre. Shipset is the annoying, babbling sidekick, while Xe is the more calm, rebellious soldier. Their individual flaws do help each other grow and become better robots, but nothing too out of the ordinary. They're nothing like Ratchet Clank because both Xe and Shipset are assholes. There's a reason why they're on the way to prison at the beginning of the game. It does make their joint effort more entertaining to watch as they become heroes of the galaxy. Because this is robots and computers we're dealing with here, there is a ton of nods and puns in the writing. Some lines are cringy, others are clever. If you like cheesy and stupid humor, you'll like Akimbot's dialogue. I want to shout out to Reese Bridger, who voiced both Xe and Shipset in English, because he's fantastic. When I looked at the credits and realized both characters are voiced by Bridger, I was shocked because they obviously sound nothing alike. Kudos to him and the rest of the cast for bringing this space comedy adventure to life in Akimbot. Gameplay is similar to Ratchet Clank, but not exactly the same. There are guns and platforming involved, but where Akimbot differs from Insomniac's long-running platforming series is the emphasis on platforming. Recent Ratchet Clank games have shifted more towards the gunplay and not the platforming. Akimbot hones in on this aspect and delivers super fun level design. Xe's movement abilities allow a double jump and a dash. You're able to leap across platforms like nothing else, wall run on specific surfaces, and even sometimes have to shoot targets to get the walls to appear again to continue platforming. Challenges like these and many more make Akimbot's gameplay very engaging. I was having a blast from start to finish because I haven't played a new 3D platformer like this in a while. Frogun is the last 3D platformer indie game that I played, but that's more of a N64/PS1 era kind of game. Actually, I lied. I played Penny's Big Breakaway this year, which that is a 3D platformer through and through. It certainly focuses on momentum-based movement and performing as many tricks as possible. 3D platformers might make a resurgence with Astrobot's massive success, and Akimbot might be part of it too. Moving on to Xe's weapons, he has a blade to slash enemies. Unlike Ratchet's wrench, the blade is always useful and can still kill enemies later in the adventure. Weapons are only limited to 4, which are the assault rifle, the sniper rifle, the rocket launcher, and the machine gun. You'll slowly unlock them through story progression, and they all have their own uses. No ammo management, but the guns will overheat over time. At first, I wish there was an ammo system as opposed to the overheating, but I soon realized it works well for Akimbot. Because there aren't many weapons to use during a single fight, it would get annoying to manage ammo amongst the 4 weapons while having waves of enemies shoot at you at once. There is a special weapon that can be equipped by pressing the triangle button. They do way more firepower and recharge when enemies explode. I usually save this weapon for boss fights or when the horde of enemies is becoming overwhelming. They range between a basic blaster to a laser to a flamethrower. I only unlock the blaster to max potential because it has the longest range with the most control. I unlock these special weapons with blue orbs that drop in crates throughout throughout each level. While it feels like the game gives you a lot of orbs, I always feel poor when visiting the shop. Maybe this area could have been expanded more outside of the 4 special weapons, but the game kind of forces the player to stick to one of them if you want to fully upgrade it by the end of the game. It's impossible to fully upgrade all 4 before the end of a normal playthrough. Also, I think it's dumb you can only switch the special weapon out whenever a shop appears. I wish you could swap it out in a menu or something, because I definitely didn't like the laser halfway through the game because of its hard control, so I was kind of forced to use it until another shop appeared. Another problem with the gameplay is the sheer difficulty. I have it set to normal, but the amount of enemies the game throws at you is kind of insane, and because there isn't a strafe button and you have to manually aim and shoot at enemies, it can get frustrating. The enemy AI is like John Wick sometimes, I'm not even joking. They will not miss unless you dodge and weave out of their line of sight. Sometimes, Shipset will have to hack a computer to open a door or raise platforms. Each time this happens, the player has to complete a minigame to unlock it. It can be as simple as following the correct card, doing a QuickTime event, or a game of Snake. They're pretty straightforward, with Snake being the only game that gave me trouble. It's either the controls or I'm just terrible at this because I always mess it up. These minigames do get tiresome after a while because they throw the same ones at you over and over again, and if you fail it, you have to do a different one, which I kind of like. I think that that is a very neat thing for them to do, where it's like, oh, okay, like you failed it once, here, we'll throw you a different one and hopefully you'll be able to finish it this time. You do take damage after failing the hacking minigame, so that's a little bit annoying, especially if you're low on HP. The game is always throwing new gameplay styles at the player too. Shooting ships in outer space or controlling this off-road vehicle, Akimbot truly has all the tropes for a PS2 3D platformer. The off-road vehicle has to be my least favorite aspect of the gameplay because every race section for it is straight up a nightmare. The last 2 sections especially had me raging like I was a kid playing Jak 2 again. The vehicle's controls are okay to move around with, but when you have to race against the clock, it's not fun. The momentum in how the vehicle moves feels off. Like if I get stuck on the slightest part of the track, the race is over and I have to restart from the beginning. This becomes extremely frustrating when you take into account the final vehicle level, where you have to race against 2 robots and you have to make it to the end while beating both of them out. 100% my least favorite part about Akimbot, and I could do without these vehicle races. Performance on the PlayStation 5 is pretty disappointing. Screen tearing is a consistent issue throughout the game, where parts of the screen will not be in line together. I thought this tweet was an over-exaggeration, but no, screen tearing happens in-game and in cutscenes. To be honest, I started to not care about it after the second level or so, but it doesn't go away. If that's something that bothers you a lot, it's sadly the biggest flaw with Akimbot performance-wise on the PlayStation 5. On the bright side, the visuals are outstanding. A very pretty and stunning 3D platformer. The textures and models are always top-notch thanks to the Unreal Engine. The soundtrack is amazing, fitting Akimbot's vibe and atmosphere very well. Off the bat, the menu music hooked me in, and I knew the rest of the soundtrack was going to deliver, and it did. The game autosaves at certain checkpoints, but at the cost of the game freezing for a second or two. Similar to the screen tearing, I got over this pretty quickly, but it does get annoying. There were some minor glitches I ran into as well. They didn't break the game, but they were funny gags, like being stuck in a falling animation, or the fire causing an invisible wall to form, forcing me to take an insane amount of damage before I realized it.
Akimbot is an indie game with less than 10 people on staff. It's a solid 3D platformer that any fan of Ratchet Clank should check out. The platforming mechanics are great, accompanied by gunplay that's more in line with a traditional third-person shooter. The story won't blow your mind, but should hopefully keep you entertained as Xe and Shipset try to save the galaxy. The visuals and soundtrack are top-notch stuff, but screen tearing and occasional freezing does hinder the overall experience. It's not the perfect indie game, and the team probably should have refined some of the performance issues prior to launch. But I can't lie, I had a ton of fun playing Akimbot. It definitely brought me back to the early Ratchet Clank days with the higher emphasis on platforming and higher difficulty curve. If you love 3D platformers, this is one you don't want to skip out on. And yeah, that is my review. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys have not already, you can subscribe. I put new videos up on Saturdays. Follow me on social media at TV Sonic Gaming. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, pretty much everything. And you can check out my podcast called the Travis and Damien Podcast. We talk about games, movies, and anime every other week. And yeah, that is all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching this video once again. And I will see you guys next time with more videos.